Welcome to the Spirit Underground podcast with Dharma teachers Spring Washam and Lama Rod Owens. These conversations will include topics on Black liberation theology, healing with plant-based medicine, indigenous wisdom, Buddhist-based meditation practices, and reconnecting to our ancestral knowledge. Together we will explore what freedom means individually, collectively, and spiritually. If you would like to support the Spirit Underground podcast, please visit the BeHereNowNetwork.com/donate. Hi, everybody. We are back with another episode of the Spirit Underground Conversations on Liberation. This is Spring Washam.
And this is Lama Rod.
Here we are. We're back again.
Just when you thought we were finished.
Oh, we got lots to talk about. We're just getting started with this podcast. So everybody, you got to check out our episodes. But this is a special episode that we get to talk about around Lama Rod's incredible new book, The New Saints, from Heartbreak to Liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so excited about this conversation and this book. And I just want to say a couple of things before we dive deep into it. And that is that when I read the manuscript a few months ago, it really hit me in a big way. And one of the themes that I wanted to talk about today was it moved me. And at first I was, so inspired, but then I got really scared, about how honest it was, how truthful it was. And I remember we had conversations where I was really scared for you, like, is it okay that we are sharing, so much personal heartbreak, so much, how much do we share as teachers? And it just, it brought up a lot of fear. And then when I moved past the fear, I began to feel the liberation in it, the truth telling, the honesty. And then I began to have my own journey with it. As I opened to it, then places in me started opening. And so I wanted to talk about, the book, the theme, and also this radical truth telling. You are so vulnerable. You are so willing to talk about your traumas, to share who you are, your needs, your journey, your suffering. And I feel now that it really opened the door to my own suffering in a new way. It's like you went first and then you gave permission. Like, okay, let's get real now. This is, so I wanted to just hear a little bit more about the process for you writing this, the New Saints and that title and, and also the heartbreak. So I'm excited to get into some of these topics with you today and just share it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that instantly comes to mind, of course, is James Baldwin. And particularly two ideas of his. First, where he talks about how if this hurt you, you have to know it hurt me first. In terms of like his writing and work. It's like if you're having an experience, then you have to know I had it first, right? So like I'm not divorced from this work. Like this work is something that's moved through my body, right? And I've had to change in the same way that others change when they come to the work, right? And that's, of course, has been so true of my experience of Baldwin anyway. The ways in which he's helped me to open really deeply to these parts of myself, particularly as a young person. And then the second piece, too, the second idea from Baldwin is when he talks about how, like, we think we're the only ones in the world suffering until we read, right? Until we read other, and all of a sudden we're not isolated anymore. We're part of this, like, this continuum of experience. And so we feel like we belong, and of course that for me decreases my experience of suffering. right? So all of that is really important, as we kind of move into talking about the book, because for me, as a prelude to this discussion, for me, it's been part of my work to embody a path, and to tell the truth about the path, from the perspective of my body and my life and my all of my identities, right? And that's not what I had coming up in Dharma practice. I had mostly white teachers, like fantastic white teachers, but they didn't reflect me, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And I realized that part of my work was to, as authentically as possible, embody this path of liberation and to tell the truth about it, to present it back to people in the same way I experience it. Right.
Right.
And that was just like very strong at the very beginning of my practice. Like, this is what you're going to do. Like, you're not going to pretend to be anything other than you are. Right.
Right,
And I
right.
just couldn't, so that feels very natural to me. That feels very innate. Right. So the books that I've done in the past, Radical Dharma, Love and Rage, have been very honest and very open. Right. And so Love and Rage came out during the quarantine 2020. And Love and Rage was a book that I was writing for the future. So as I was writing Love and Rage, I didn't really get it. Right? Like, why am I writing this? Well, first of all, I didn't want to write a book on anger, right? And secondly, when as I was writing, I just couldn't actually connect to it. Like, I was like, this doesn't
Mm.
seem to be talking about what's happening now. So like, I just felt very disconnected the whole time I
Mhm.
was putting the
Mhm.
manuscript together. And the manuscript was mostly transcribed teachings, right? So I was like developing the book as I was teaching and taking teachings, and working them into the actual manuscript. So, but when Love and Rage dropped during the pandemic, it was like, oh, this book was for this year. Right?
Yeah, it all starts to make sense, right?
Yeah, and I was
Mhm.
like, okay, I really learned something important about just trusting the process, trusting what the book wants, because the book really takes on personality. It's conscious, right? When I start a book, it becomes conscious, right? And so from Love and Rage, I learned to trust it, right? And so, of course, the same year, 2020, after Love and Rage came out, Love and Rage came out in June, and then later George Floyd, or before, I forget what the placement of everything was, um, but the killing of George Floyd, of course, ignited this whole movement again, renewed movement for Black life, liberation of Black life, and I just saw so many people just like on the streets organizing, right, and then I was like in the media, with the book, helping people to make sense of the importance of anger, and organizing and activism, So I was going, head to head with some folks, right? That I was like, I,
Right. All these activists, everyone
yeah,
was so
everyone
emotional.
was so
It
emotional. And
was so
then
hard.
there were people who were just like not really connecting to the urgency of the moment. So all that was happening. But really, something really began to shift when I hosted a panel for the public, or for the New York Public Library system, and that was Pride Month, June of that year, and I moderated a panel for millennial activists, and it was really during that panel where I was like, "Huh, I think I could like offer something really
Mm.
interesting." To how
Mhm.
people are beginning to think right now about what it means to be change agents and to be good, right? And to make sense of like the shift that we're experiencing as a collective, which I call the apocalypse, which I've been talking about for years at this point. And I was like, okay, there's something here that's actually calling me into engagement. And then of course Tina Turner, who's now our ancestor, her song, "We Don't Need Another Hero," which is '80s power ballad from,
Oh yeah, that's an
Mad
epic
Max.
ballad right there.
It's so I love an '80s power ballad. Oh my god! Like I, just, and I just like, and that song was just like in my head. Like, we
We
don't
don't
need
need
another
another
hero. We
hero.
don't need another
Uh-huh.
hero. I was like, huh, okay, there's something there. And then slowly, this idea of like, how can we like become saints? Like, I want to become a saint, but not in the same way we understand saints. But there's got to be a new contemporary understanding of sainthood, of course, based upon the Bodhisattva tradition, in Buddhism, which is the Buddha saint, ideal. And I've been, of course, doing a lot of thinking about the bodhisattvas as well. So that all came together, and I was like, oh, the bodhisattva. I want to rethink the bodhisattva tradition
Mm-hmm.
for contemporary, socially engaged folks. Like, I want a manual
Yeah,
that's
I get that.
accessible.
And a modern manual.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
something that is written in the language of people who are doing the work, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, I'm doing the work. So it's like, it's my language, right? And that's where New Saints really started to emerge from, was this idea that like this could be a reinterpretation of the Bodhisattva tradition in a way that feels really direct and contemporary. But first and foremost, it had to be really truthful and honest,
Yes.
you know. And I
And for
had,
those who,
yeah.
yeah, I was
Mhm.
going to just say, sorry, keep going because I was just going to
Oh, go
explain a
ahead.
little bit of the bodhisattva. For those who might not know
Yeah.
that term,
Mhm.
bodhi means
Mhm.
awake and sattva means hero,
Mhm.
So the bodhisattva is a vow that we take to be of service to all beings, to live altruistic lives, to be
Yeah.
for the greater good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. And I wanted to just rethink all of those, like virtue, what it means to be good, what it means to do good, right? And to situate that in a really contemporary, modern, kind of like setting, right? I wanted people just to be able to pick up the book and not get lost in all the jargon and the dogma, like you had to explain all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, let's rethink the language so we don't have to go through all of that. Like, what does it mean to do good work in my body in this time of apocalypse and the collapse of so many of these old systems? Like, what does it mean to be in the world and change the world right now? Right. And that's where I started. Right.
Yeah, let's start there for a second. Here we
Yeah.
go with this idea of being good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is like in the beginning chapters. I love
Yeah.
it. It's like all these do gooders,
Yeah.
everybody was activated, everyone was
Yeah.
trying. But this is something that I think is so important about this conversation that we're having today.
Yeah.
Because, what I'm understanding about myself, and, being a Dharma teacher, being a
Mhm.
writer, being in these
Mhm.
conversations, we're constantly in evolution, everybody. We're
Mhm.
not depositing ourselves as
Mhm.
enlightened, like this is the
Right.
final word. What we're growing all the time. And this
But some people
idea,
are though.
yeah, some people
There's
are,
yeah.
yeah, which is amazing. And
There's
call us,
something.
we'll interview you. um, but this, I want to start with that
Mhm.
idea of being good
Yeah.
because I think
Mhm.
so many of us in the spiritual traditions that we've come out of, whether it's
Mhm.
Buddhism or
Mhm.
Christianity or Islam or
Yeah.
Hinduism, to be good means to suppress something else. So
Yeah.
if I'm good, then,
Mhm.
I need to hide or
Mhm.
suppress all my
Mhm.
rage and anger, greed or lust or
Yeah.
longing.
Yeah.
And I think there was something so refreshing
Yeah.
about your book as we start with this idea, like, let's give up this
Yeah.
idea
Yeah.
and let's get down to what's really here.
Yeah.
And that, it seems so beneficial because we're not trying to live into an
Yeah.
ideal.
Yeah.
We're trying to honor what is really here. So the way you write in the
Mhm.
beginning, it opens the door to all the totality of our being.
Yeah.
right? Instead of this dualistic way of, okay, if I'm on the path of
Yeah.
light, light,
Yeah.
light, do
Exactly.
good, compassion,
Exactly.
compassion, and
Yeah.
then we negate all of this
Hmm.
trauma and suffering, and we bypass it, we overlook it, or we just
Yeah.
think, oh, those aren't my good parts.
Exactly. Right. And because we're like, we actually don't know how to metabolize the shadow or the
Mm-hmm.
discomfort or the pain. And so we think that we just have to push it away or repress it and then just kind of cling to this idea of light,
Yes,
and
that's the new age
goodness.
movement too, right? It's like,
That is
don't
new age.
cry,
Yeah.
just be the
Just
light,
be happy. Yeah. There's be
Toxic
happy.
happiness. Yeah, they call it toxic happiness, right? Where you're
Exactly.
just like, things are not okay, but you
Yeah.
overlay this on because
Yeah.
yeah. So I like how right at the beginning, it's like,
Hmm.
let's be really real here.
Yeah.
Being good, this
Yeah.
concept doesn't mean that we don't have these other parts. And how are we integrating them? And I
Hmm.
found that the way you wrote it, the way you
Hmm.
expressed it, the way you named it, it allowed for this other part of myself to come out that I felt
Yeah.
that I was unconscious. It's
Yeah.
Freudian, the unconscious parts
Yeah.
of our
Yeah.
mind that we disassociate from
Yeah.
and that need to be integrated and liberated. So
Yeah.
I love that. So maybe we can talk more about this idea of
Yeah.
good.
Well, I think it's like so much of our goodness is very performative, right? And I think from an early age, we learn what to do and what not to do, right? We learn what to do to get the resources that we need, and we learn what not to do, right? That would jeopardize those resources, right? So when I was growing up, it was like, oh, you have to be a good boy or a good girl, right? Just kind of like in that intense like binary dualism, right? But to be a good
Mm.
boy, it was like it just started feeling like to be considered a good boy, I just had to be quiet. I had to say yes and no. I had to accept things. I couldn't express what I really needed. I had to suppress my own needs, right? You know, and that over time just felt like really intense suffering. It was like I was losing an experience of who I really was, right?
Mm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
I started like falling into this cycle of just wanting to please everyone, right? To get everything that I thought I needed, like love,
And approval
and approval,
and yeah,
validation, all of
we
that.
want to belong. So we
We want to
start
belong.
there. We're doing this because we have a deep need for
Yeah,
belonging,
yeah,
especially if we're on a spiritual path, or
yeah,
especially if we want to feel spirit, the universe, God, the creator. We feel
yeah,
like we join these communities and then we
yeah,
start the game,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then these other shadowy parts,
Hmm.
we deeply disassociate because that
Yeah,
would mean we can't belong.
yeah, yeah,
So we start this kind of cutting off or
yeah,
something, this splitting off. And I see
yeah.
this in Buddhism a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
People just meditate through it without
Yeah,
feeling it,
yeah,
without kind of dealing with it,
yeah.
right? We can use these ideas and
Hmm.
concepts and then we label it as demonic,
Hmm.
dark, negative,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Instead of sort of embracing our confusion,
yeah,
right? The part that
yeah,
is, you know,
yeah,
troubling for us. We don't know
yeah,
what to do with it. And also whole
yeah.
communities, they reinforce it together,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
So then we become, you know, we wear masks, we become kind of fake, right?
yeah.
We're not totally fake. We're
Right.
sincere,
Yeah.
but we're
But we
just not
yeah,
whole.
we're not whole, right? And then on top of that, right, and being black and queer, already as black people, we're already considered less than, or we've lost a kind of like personhood, right? Because that's how
Mm.
you know, um, you know, uh, like white supremacy works. Like we have to be rendered less than, you know. And so I was like, okay, I thought that if I could just make people comfortable, then I could regain my personhood and validation from white people,
Yes. Oh
like,
my gosh. So many of us do that.
yeah, and we do that. And that's another kind of performance, right? And then it gets, for me, it got to a point where, and I talk about this particularly in Love and Rage, where it's just like the anger was so, like so buried, right?
Mhm.
That it was coming
Mhm.
up in ways that I wasn't even conscious of. And I'm really grateful to have had elders who set me down and helped me to start, paying attention to the ways in which, like, my anger wasn't actually being held, and cared for. And I wasn't consciously expressing anger or holding anger because I didn't want to be an angry black man. And I didn't want to
Right.
have to deal with the consequences of how my anger made white people uncomfortable, right? And how that discomfort was weaponized as violence back against me. So I had learned to repress that and then turn into passive aggressiveness, right? Which is still
Mhm.
part of what I still work with to this day. And so I had to, like, cut through all of that. Like, I had to let go of this idea of wanting to be validated or wanting to be seen. And I had to develop the courage to say, this is what I need. And I don't care if this makes me look good or bad, but this is what I need to do in order to experience health and well being and happiness and groundedness, right? And all of that, right? That deep courage is, like, extremely important if we want to get real about how we're experiencing the world and how, like, we want the world to be. And there are lots of people who are very honest, about how they want the world to be, right? Absolutely. And those people we get, like, really frustrated with, as well. But, like, yeah, with goodness, it felt like a club that we were trying to get memberships to, like the Good People Club, right?
Mm. Mhm.
And of course, in the book, I talk about how people performed goodness on social media, particularly after George Floyd, and how people were just, like, trying to look really good by, like, doing certain posts, Black Lives Matter post, and I talk about how I ended up on every, like, the Black people you need to follow list, because
I
that
remember
was like,
seeing that. Yeah.
yeah, because it's like, oh, let me perform this goodness. But that goodness, and this is, like, the main point of the work around goodness for me, goodness is linked to the work that I'm doing to get free, right? To get free from dualism, to get free from the causes and conditions of suffering, to actually cut through delusion, right? And to experience my own awakened mind. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. So my goodness, therefore, is based upon how I'm choosing second by second to reduce harm and violence, to reduce delusion, and to choose clarity, right? And to choose care for myself and to choose care for others. Like, that's my understanding of goodness, and that's also the ethical framework that I'm working with. I'm not interested in what's good and bad anymore, or what I should or shouldn't
Right.
do. Like, I'm really
Mhm.
interested in what I should be doing to get free and what I shouldn't be doing because it gets in the way of freedom. Like, what is conducive to getting free and what isn't conducive to getting free. And from that kind of, like, kind of framework, then I'm able to say, you know what, there are other people doing things that, like, are good for their liberation, but it's not good for mine. Like, I don't need to be a monk in a monastery right now. Like, I don't need to be in lifelong retreat. Like, I don't need to do that. That's not what I need, but that's what other folks need, right?
Right.
Or, like, I don't have to take vows refraining from certain things because that's not an issue for me, but other folks do, you know.
Well, I
But
think this is a conversation that many of us are looking at right now, right? It's
mhm,
like, what is the path?
mhm,
How do we find our own way with this? How do we do this? I mean, I
yeah,
meet a lot of people who are beginning their spiritual journey, and then I meet people who
mhm,
have been on the path for a long time. But I have a feeling your book is going to appeal to a lot of newer people.
yes, and that's the point. Mhm,
Yeah, it's a,
mhm,
because they want to be themselves,
yeah,
right? And they want to be
exactly.
radically honest. This new
Yeah,
generation, I tell you, they want the truth. And I
yeah,
love that about
there's no
them. I'm like,
bullshit.
no
Yeah,
bullshit. Don't give me these
no.
fake teachers. They've been through.
Tell me about
all of
it.
these hypocrisies,
Yep.
and they're like, I'm
Mhm.
not listening to another fake person tell
Yeah.
me the path, and then they go off and they're
Yep.
sexually molesting everyone and all these different things.
Well,
So we
preach,
start,
preach.
yeah.
That's it.
We start with this idea. It's
Yeah.
like it's a raw time. It's a
Yeah.
truth telling
Yeah.
time, and it's
Yeah.
feels like, let's not be good. Let's be honest. We know
Yeah.
that we want to live a compassionate life.
Yeah.
This path is about awakening to deeper levels of
Yeah.
self compassion.
Yeah.
And when we do the work on ourselves, and this is really important, the shadow work, liberating this from ourselves is a benevolent act of compassion for all beings.
Yeah.
When we go
Yeah.
deep into our own process and we're
Mhm.
honest, this allows
Mhm.
for so much more compassion. This is what I'm seeing
Yeah.
just in my own work.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
the heartbreak, because it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking when you
Yeah.
you dive in. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, everybody.
Yeah.
Don't be fooled. I want to say, do not be fooled by people selling you that this path to liberation is one joyful moment after another, and
Yeah.
one blissful, like an
Yeah.
elevator, you just keep taking to the all the
Yeah.
way to the heaven realm.
Yeah.
No, you may go
Yeah.
into the deepest
Yeah.
work of your life. In
Yeah.
fact, be prepared
Yeah.
to deal with heartbreak,
Yeah.
because our
Yeah.
own delusions,
Mhm.
our own traumas, when we
Mhm.
really go into it, and that's the next piece I want to talk about,
Mhm.
is I love the title so much because it's like heartbroken. So many of us
Mhm.
are so
Mm.
heartbroken by
Absolutely.
the world,
Yeah.
heartbroken
Disappointed.
by,
Mhm.
yeah. So let's talk about the
Yeah.
realness of the path and what it really brings up,
Yeah.
because this spiritual materialistic self-help movement, it's incredibly inaccurate how it
Yeah.
presents the
Yeah.
path of awakening.
Yeah.
And I
As
just
yeah.
need to cut through that. Your book does cut through that.
Well, it's because it's about cutting through the violence of oversimplicity.
Mm.
Like self-help attempts to oversimplify the work of getting free,
Oh
right? And
man,
cutting through
does it ever?
suffering. Like 3 steps. Like here's your 3 steps. It's always a 3-step process, right?
Yeah, here's your mantra in the morning. Just say
Yeah.
this over and over.
Right. Like here's the app for you to sign up for. Here's the membership. And like I say in the book, it's like that's part of the violence of the wellness self-help industrial
Mm.
complex, is where people weaponize our desire for perfection and happiness against us.
They
You
sell
know,
it.
they
Yes.
sell it. It's like, if
Yeah,
you
they're
just
making
do
money on this.
this, you'll be perfect. Because look at me. Like, you see all these people on like Instagram in particular, like these self help folks, the yoga folks, not all, but like
Mhm.
the folks who are just really invested in appearance and aesthetics. They're like beautiful, like, and just like well manicured, social media platforms. And I look at that and I say, what are you really selling here? Because it
Yeah.
feels like you're selling a lifestyle, you're selling like an aesthetic, right? But I don't see you helping me through like the complexities of suffering in this world, right? And even more particular, I just want to say this too, because like, I just want to say it, but like, particularly, like, I'm tired of people using their like their like conventional beauty
Mm.
to sell a product, to sell a health, wellness, spiritual product, right? To use your physical beauty and your conventional physical beauty, your conventional attraction, right, to sell things, because because people know that confuses us. Like, our attraction, our eroticism feels really confusing to us, because we think that when that's awakened for us, if someone presents that to us and we're like awakening to that, or we're noticing how we're being attracted to someone, we think that's like somehow spiritual, or that's somehow the work, and
Yeah,
that's
it's
not it. That's not it. But we get fooled by that. And that's the politics of like desire, the politics of desirability, as people like to call it on the streets, pretty privilege, right? You use that to take power from folks, or people rather just offer their agency to folks they find really attractive, right? And then you enter into this kind of like relationship. It almost feels like brainwashing, in a way,
Well, yeah, and
you
it
know?
gets people in a way deeper into their suffering because they're
Yeah,
desiring to look like this person. They're not really desiring true liberation, like the
yeah,
deep work. It's
yeah,
like this superficial level, right?
yeah,
Oh, if I look
yeah.
good, I take all these Instagram
Mhm,
pictures and look at how I
mhm,
can do these poses. And
mhm,
I wonder with so much of this online,
mhm.
how many people have real skin in the
Yeah,
game?
yeah,
You
and
know,
I
it's
don't
a
think it's that
job they're
many.
selling.
Well, selling something, yeah, I don't think as many as we think there are, you know? But, even getting back to, like, our original question here around, like, really dealing with the heartbreak of the path,
Yes.
right? Like, I think we want, you know, a linear progression into this. Like, we wanna be told that if we start at A, we're gonna go to B next.
Exactly, and B is higher than A, and it's like an ascension, right?
Yeah,
It was greater and greater light, not
yeah,
greater and greater, we're
yeah,
looking for that.
yeah, but you may very well start at J. and go backward. Like, it's like this is nonlinear work, right? And you're
Mm,
like working, I mean, across timelines. You're working with the past and the future. You're working with ancestors. You're working across dimensions. I mean, you're working across frequencies. Like, it's not this linear path. And so when you come into really wanting to reduce suffering, you have to be like, okay, whatever comes comes, right? That's my work, and the secrets of your mind, right, which we can for many of us cannot ever fathom, like all these layers of like experiences that are just so
mm,
buried and
yeah.
unconscious, how they begin to be uncovered and revealed, and how that, if you're not prepared for that, it just kind of throws you off because you're like, what
Yeah.
is this?
Nobody's
Like, what?
talking about that in your
Yeah,
yoga class with all the
exactly.
pretty people doing, shavasana and,
Yeah,
blissing out. And
yeah,
I'm not, and to say that that's okay. Those are beautiful experiences.
right.
But let's get real here, folks. This is this path,
Yeah,
and everybody's, there's a kind of, we're all collectively doing that. Even as a Spirit Rock teacher, I would
yeah.
see the flyers for Spirit Rock
Hmm.
retreats, and they'd have
Hmm.
these pretty people blissed out sitting on the hill. But that's not what I saw when I was teaching. I saw people in sweatpants, crying, Kleenexes falling out of
Yeah.
their pockets in deep
Hmm.
distress, working out their karma,
Yeah.
feeling things.
The struggle.
This embodiment
Yeah.
process, what we're asking people to do is to be here in their bodies. And this
Hmm.
is, you got to look at everything
Yeah.
here
Yeah. To
and be
begin.
willing.
Yeah. The willing, exactly. The willingness, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to, this is the path of like learning to name where the struggle, where the suffering is, and learning how to take care of that and to release that energy, right? So that we can actually expand more and more into this experience of clarity, wisdom. Like, we start getting clear. The more we get clear, the more we begin to understand how to choose what feels liberating, not to like constantly react to and choose the material that's going to get us deeper into these cycles of suffering, right?
Yeah. And I think also another piece that the self
Hmm.
help movement
Hmm.
unknowingly creates is this, when you're deep in your trauma, it's like you're inferior.
Yeah.
You're feeling this
Yeah.
suffering. It's like, wow, you just don't get it. You're just
Yeah.
not. Wow, you're
Yeah.
depressed. You have,
Yeah.
or you're
Exactly.
feeling this. You're crying, or you feel this
Hmm.
terror, and wow, you're just not really on the path here, right? And
Hmm.
so this also leads to like a sense of failure, and we already hide our suffering. We know that in the
Yeah.
West is pervasive, right?
Yeah.
This kind of hidden part, we just pretend.
Yeah.
Um, but I think even society, as we're bringing out, even it goes so deep, right? Our society, as we're bringing out all these issues with power and race, we're being
Yeah.
attacked for it.
Yeah. That's
You
right.
guys are focusing on the negative. You're racist because you're talking about racism.
Yeah.
It's you, right? And
Yeah.
it's this kind of, so we're fighting against this kind of culture
Mhm.
war that to bring up anything, you're attacked for it. To
Yeah.
to to name is also, you know, dangerous in
Yeah.
a way with our culture. And that's what I
Yeah.
had a fear about your book. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, it's so vulnerable. What if people started attacking you because you're just so raw?
Well, that's a really good point. And I remember us going into that, and for me, it's like, I mean, I for as long as I can remember, I've been really concerned with people, and people suffering and trying to help folks, right? And then when I got into like really formal activism, like this is the first thing you learn, like, of course, like you're going to be actually triggering people. Like that's, and for me, like, and having studied the lives of so many great change leaders who actually were killed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Medgar Evers, right? Malcolm X, Dr. King, just to name a few, people who really lost their lives because of the work they were doing to free us, to free Black folks, right? I was just like, of course, that's part of like what we have to deal with and negotiate, right? And so even with the book, it's like, yeah, like I can I can write in such a vulnerable way, but like I've done the work to be able to offer that and to let that go. So whatever you need to say, you should say it because like I've already done the deep work, right? Where it's like I am very clear about how I have experienced freedom through this deep emotional labor that I've done for myself, right? And so the ways in
Mm.
which you attack me is actually about the ways in which you're trying to bypass your own pain and weaponizing that reactivity against me. And I just don't consent to that. I'm like, this has nothing to do with me. This has everything actually to do with your own suffering right now and how you don't know how to take care of it. So you're trying to
Exactly.
annihilate me and get
Right.
me out the way, but I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, they're gonna blame you. Rod, I
Yeah,
wanted to feel good. I wanted to feel happy. And now by you sharing the
yeah,
depth of your own
yeah.
trauma,
Hmm.
it is a mirror, right? It's like,
Becomes a
Rod, I
mirror.
didn't want to hear this. I wanted you to take me to, happy
Yeah,
land. And now you took me into your trauma. Now I have to feel my trauma. And now I'm pissed. It's like, give me
yeah,
my money back. But it's like,
yeah.
no,
Well,
this is it.
and then like, and that means that you shouldn't read everything you put your hands on, and that's what my teacher actually gave us a talk about that. He was like, because there's a book about it doesn't mean you should be reading it. I was like, okay.
Well, that's good advice. Well, I say to people, read at your own risk because if you want to be free,
Yeah,
you'll take this as a mirror and you'll look. But if you want some kind of self-help gratification or a way to
yeah,
just, try to get to the light realm, or avoid,
yeah.
you're not going to enjoy the process. If you want to go
No.
into it, go into it. Let's do it.
And that's not us. That's not what we do. So don't come to our books talking about,
Yeah. Talking about what you want, how you wanted to feel happy, you will, but it's a deeper happiness if you're willing
Mhm.
to really get down to it. I mean,
Yeah,
this is what I feel is so potent. And this is
yeah,
why we like working with plant medicine. Is why, we want to cut down and get to the real liberation here. And for those of
yeah.
you who want to
Mhm,
bypass or you think this
mhm.
is rainbows and unicorn only, yes, there are rainbows and
Yeah,
unicorns. We're not saying they're
absolutely.
not there.
Yeah,
But
no,
if you only want that,
yeah,
then, I don't know if you have real
yeah.
skin in the game here.
Well, that's why I wrote this chapter on work and work. you
Yeah,
know,
let's talk about that chapter.
I mean, because it's like what I began to really see is that people aren't practicing deeply enough. Even
Hmm.
practitioners, right? There's like this is a different situation that we're in right now. Like this isn't surface level practice. This is like going real deep, as we've been talking about, going deep into these depths, these causes and conditions, these roots of
Hmm.
suffering. And the roots of the suffering, of course, is about delusion, and the narratives that we told ourselves that we use to cope or we use to protect ourselves from real pain. Like those are, it's hard to maintain those narratives when everything is shifting so quickly and rapidly, right? And then therefore your work, or your practice has to change. Like you have to shift gears. into something a little more rugged, a little more dynamic, right? You have to get, as I often say, it's like when samsara comes to you with a kind of intense rigidity, like you have to like let loose, right? And get unpredictable, you
Yeah, a
know?
different strategy, a different
Yeah.
approach.
You need a different approach, and people aren't shifting into that different approach. So that's why I was like, okay, let's talk about what practice is. Let's get into it, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't think
Mhm.
people think they're practicing, but I don't think they're not actually. They're doing something, but like deep, deep practice is not what they're doing.
Well, they wanna feel better, this is
Yeah.
it's a kind of like I get it. People come and they wanna just like they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
They just, they want a relief. They want a quick fix.
Hmm.
And I get it. I do too. A lot of times we wake
Yeah.
up like, "Give me the quick fix." There really isn't one, everybody,
Hmm.
but, we can it's a momentary thing. So we use whatever we use, we hold on to what we
Yeah.
hold on.
Yeah.
But, I think what you're talking about is that because we're in this apocalyptic time,
Hmm.
because this is like I feel like it's Pluto,
Yeah.
we're in the underworld,
Yeah.
folks. This
Yeah.
is the underbelly time. This is and in that, we do need to work differently. We do
Yeah.
need to go in differently. And I want to say that part of the challenge that I've experienced in my own path the last
Hmm.
6 months is seeing the level of self deception,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that the ego is protecting us from, it thinks it's protecting us from truth,
Hmm.
right? But when we do this work, it does break your heart.
Yeah.
When we get down to the deepest levels of
Hmm.
our trauma and our dysfunction and
Hmm.
our neuroses, you
Yeah.
know, we're digging deep in order to let it go, everybody.
Yeah.
It's not to wallow in it. And this is the
Hmm.
key. We're not digging in the
Hmm.
boneyard to
Right.
lay down there forever. We're
Hmm.
we're we're going through a passage.
Yeah.
It's a portal. It's an
Exactly.
experience. And it's fire.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fire, and that fire burns something away. It's not about that, we're talking about this suffering as if
Hmm.
we're negating that the light is there. Yes, our nature is that.
Hmm.
But these obstacles and these delusions, they're fighting back right now. That's why you're
Hmm.
saying we got to go to another level of
Hmm.
work, right?
Hmm.
We sort of, it's Kali. It's Kali-esque. It's
Yeah.
Mahakala.
Yeah. Was a kind of fierceness.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fierceness. That's why I talk about fierceness. Like there's regular practice, which is work, WORK. And then there's like the fierce practice, the cutting through practice, which I say work, like which is WERK.
Right. Yeah,
Like
totally.
work with a snap,
Yeah, totally.
work. You have to work it. Like this is like we have to start working this shit right now,
Yeah,
and start
yeah.
really cutting through it, really metabolizing it, right? You know, like, and because also the other issues that we've self-identified with the suffering, right? So we think it's who we are, which makes it even harder to metabolize and to release it because it feels like we're dying,
Oh
you
yes,
know?
I testify to that. We are right.
Yeah,
Are clinging onto these identities as
yeah,
being broken or
yeah,
being, we hold on to the suffering, and that's the
yeah,
danger of it.
yeah,
Like you go down into the underworld and you start clinging to these dead bodies,
yeah, yep, yeah,
and it's like not you. Cut
yeah,
through. That's not
yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's and I often say this about white supremacy too, and I tell this to white folks is that like you're gonna have to kill whiteness, and it's gonna feel
Mm.
like you're killing yourself, right? Because
Oh,
that's how
yes.
just so self-identified with that, with whiteness as this this ideal, this system, whatever, right? But to kill whiteness means that you're gonna have to die in some way, and that's gonna be really intense. And like, who has the courage to do that? Right? That's the kind of practice we're talking about. Like, and this practice, like your choice, right, to undergo this kind of transformative practice is really based upon how much you love yourself and how much you want to be free. And as well as how much you love and care for others and want them to be free from your violence. Like,
Yes.
I think both of those pieces have to be there for us to choose to go into this intense kinds of deep work, right?
Absolutely. And this is the work of the spiritual warrior. I
Yeah,
mean, you're
that's it.
willing to break your heart. You're willing to dive deep. You're willing to
Yeah,
go in the graveyard. You're willing to
yeah,
die 1,000 deaths,
yeah,
and then you rise out of
yeah,
that, something bigger,
yeah,
something more real and powerful. And,
yeah,
and that's what we need. And I think
yeah.
that that's the real path. As a true
Mhm,
spiritual warrior
mhm.
is someone who is willing to die every day to delusion and
Yeah,
every day to their, and also as people of color,
yeah.
we also need to die to the program too.
Mhm,
White
mhm,
supremacy programming that we have.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
kind of like both sides, right? We're both,
mhm.
the oppressed and the oppressor,
Yeah,
we're dancing with that,
yeah.
you know, and both of us are in the delusion of
Mhm,
it,
mhm.
from years of the conditioning.
Yeah.
But as communities of color, we we
Mhm.
we also have to do that deep
Yeah,
work. And I think that that's something that we can get more into, is like really diving into what
yeah,
the work is. Because I think what
yeah.
I love the most about your book is
Mhm.
because people are going to be like, how do I do it? I can barely
Exactly,
manage.
exactly.
I'm freaking out right now.
Yeah.
You want me to go deeper? How? I don't even, I can barely meditate.
Well, that's it, like, that's exactly it, and that's why I made the choice to be so honest and vulnerable. I knew people would be like, "Well, how do you do that? That's not possible." Like,
Mm,
and I was like, "No, here it is. Here's, like, a very clear, in-depth, exploration of how I've done the things that I've done," because I think that, in terms of Dharma books, Buddhist books, right? There's definitely a way that you can write a book and just have it just as the teaching. This is the teaching, just do the teaching,
right. With
but
no disclosure,
no
no how you
disclosure.
did it. No,
But
yeah.
people aren't well, the people that I'm trying to talk to aren't interested in that. Like they're like, okay, yeah, so you've told me, now show me. And not only can I show you in the writing, I can show up with you in person and have you see this transformation and change, right? But
Mm,
also, as I'm thinking about it too, I want to be very clear. I didn't really write this book for Buddhists, right? Like this isn't like, I mean, yeah, anyone can read it, absolutely, but when you're writing, like you have to be clear about who you're writing to, right? And I was very clear. I'm writing to like young folks. I'm
mhm.
writing to like black and queer and trans folks. I'm writing to people who are concerned about the world, but also who know that to be in the world and to have the impact in the world that we need to have, it takes a lot of personal and interpersonal transformation. People who get that, who are ready to go deeper with that, right? But I'm not really necessarily talking to like older Buddhists or really established Buddhists. I'm not, because particularly, for those folks who are just like, I just want to be happy and comfortable, I'm not suffering that much.
Or they just want to stay with their practice how it is. They don't want to
Yeah,
use it to go like what we're talking about
yeah,
next level. They like,
yeah,
no, no, I'm good here. I'm not
yeah,
really, I'm not evolving for the next,
yeah,
this new era. It almost
yeah,
feels like there's like this gap between those who
hmm,
are willing to go to that next level,
yeah,
right? To meet the challenges that we could be facing in this world. I mean, when we say apocalypse, I
yeah,
mean, that's a powerful word. And I
yeah,
think we're training. Your book
mhm,
is not only a workbook, it's like a
mhm.
survival guide.
Right, right, exactly. Like yeah, absolutely, we're training right now, and I just don't think a lot of people actually get the severity right
No,
now. It's
no.
not
Well,
it's not just about the world either. It's not just about this reality and this planet and this world system that we're in. It's more than that. It's more about like how are we wasting this opportunity to really get free from this cycle of having to unconsciously or without agency be here over and over and over again. Like I want to develop such a revolutionary kind of care that actually gives me the agency to choose where I want to go and do work. to actually help me to consciously say, yes, I am going to go to the front lines and be right there to
Mm,
do work. And for
mhm,
me, that's what I wanted to communicate about the Bodhisattva vow within this new context of the new saints. Like we choose to go where the struggle is, right? And we choose it
mhm.
consciously. We don't get tricked into it. We don't unconsciously get wrapped up in it. No, we see what's happening and we say, that's where I'm going. And to have that kind of fierceness, that bravery, but really it's love and truth telling. It's like
Yes.
the deepest, most profound love that compels us to go into the heart of suffering and to say, I'm going to do what I can. Right. I may not save a lot of people. I may not create a whole bunch of change, but I'm going to show up. Right. And
Yeah.
do what I can. And then when I can't, then I leave, I transition, and then I'll start it all over again. Right. That's what I'm really talking about. Right. And I know people listening to this are like, that's really overwhelming and intense. However, like when you situate yourself in love, you are so overwhelmingly resourced. Right.
Mhm,
You get a
mhm.
lot of resources when you choose to go to the front line. And that's what we don't talk about either. Like you get the experience of space, so like actually you begin to feel like you don't feel so claustrophobic and trapped and rigid. There's a lot of fluidity and a lot of space. There's a deeper connection to emptiness, so everything that arises feels really transparent and translucent, right? Like it's not as
Mhm.
real as other people
Yeah, you're not
think it is.
grasping onto it. You're not
Yeah,
feeding it the same, it doesn't have the
yeah,
same meaning
exactly,
as it used to.
and
Yeah.
this life, this reality is just a second. Even, I mean, because time is non-conceptual and time does not exist. So how long is this work that we're doing in this life that we've chosen to be in? Like how long is this actually? It may seem like decades and decades, but maybe when we transition, well, we're gonna be like, oh my God, that was a split second. Like what was that?
Yeah, that was just like, wow, what a journey. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I can do that again. You know, I mean,
After a little
I'm like,
vacation.
well, at this point, I'm like, I'll take a break next,
Yeah, let's take
next
a
time.
break.
Don't call my number next.
And
I'll
that
call you.
and that's very James Baldwin because
Yeah,
he went straight into the
yeah,
wound,
oh yeah,
right into the heart of it, and
yeah.
spoke to it and gave speeches in the middle of it and wrote so eloquently about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not your Negro. I have to watch that like regularly. That's
Yeah.
like on tap. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, okay, let's go through this again. And it's always
Yeah.
like the first time.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is, James Baldwin is a true spiritual
Yeah.
hero,
Yeah.
right? That could
Mm-hmm.
go right into it and write. And there's something that is deeply, I feel the inspiration in your new book
Yeah.
connected to that, to go right into the middle of this
Yeah.
wound,
Mm-hmm.
and then to start writing this like manual,
Mm-hmm.
a
And to yeah,
guidebook.
yeah, a
Hmm.
guidebook, and to do it in a way that like where I'm not asking you to take care of me, like I am cared for, right? I mean, my practice takes care of me, like my ancestors take care of me, and so forth and so on. My communities take care of me. My practice, takes care of me, right? But like writing in this way is like I'm just opening a window for you just so you can peek in and to see what's happening. I'm not giving you this work to do. Whatever work you feel like you're getting is actually your work, right? And I think sometimes we can get confused about this, as we've been talking about earlier, right? It's like, oh, I'm a rod trigger this thing. Well, I didn't. Whatever's being triggered was already there.
Exactly. And that let's reiterate this for a second because I think people nobody's triggering anybody, everybody. Let me give you a quick way to cut through a lot of delusion.
Mhm.
It's your mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you read somebody else's traumatic story and you're
Mhm.
triggered, or you hear something, or you experience something, it's
Mhm.
your work.
Yeah.
And when everything is a mirror, and I think this is a
Yeah.
really important piece, is don't
Yeah.
spend your time blaming everyone else when you're feeling something at this moment.
That's oh my goodness. That's, that's it. Like we're so trauma identified
Yes.
right now that like it's like a minefield, right?
Oh,
And
yeah, it's explosions of everyone blaming everyone
and
else for their triggers, you
for
know?
me, and again, from us, right? Like we I just want to say clearly that like, well, I will just speak for myself, now, but like just saying very clearly that like the work that I've done with my own trauma has really meant taking responsibility for my trauma, because if I don't, again, name it, take responsibility for it, then there's no way I can tend to it. And the
Right.
tending means releasing, letting go, metabolizing, right? And if we keep, I don't know, like, I just feel like we expect other people to heal us when in fact much of the labor is healing ourselves.
Well, that's I mean, but so much of that and that's what's heartbreaking, Rod.
Yeah.
That's what when you get your heart really broken is when you
Yeah.
realize nobody I mean, I had this
Yeah.
recently, right? Getting
Yeah.
trying to get into a new relationship. It's like, "Save me from my childhood pain." It's like, "Oh,
Right.
well, this is your," and it was beautiful and heartbreaking and glorious and to take responsibility. It was also deeply empowering. Like, I can
Mhm.
fix this. I have capacity. We have what it takes to work with our pain. We're learning new strategies. We're learning new ways. We're learning more about how to take responsibility. We want to
Mhm.
often we would give it to God. God, heal this. Sometimes that works, but
Yeah.
a lot of times it means you got to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
The real work.
Yeah. Mhm.
God's going to hand you back your task and you're
Mhm.
going to have to do it. It's just not as simple as just praying it away.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
We'll get guidance, but then we're going to have to put on our work boots,
Exactly.
pull on our overalls and
Yeah.
get down to it,
Yeah.
which
Exactly.
means feeling and being and utilizing all of the deep advice
Yeah.
that you lay out in this book,
Yeah.
how to do it. So it's not just like we're talking about this and we're
Yeah.
leaving you on your own, everybody, because some people go, this is impossible. How do I
Yeah.
heal my deep trauma?
Yeah.
This show, this podcast is
Yeah.
going to start going deeper and deeper into strategies. What does it mean to be embodied? How do we
Mhm.
use the new Saints handbook? How do we, like, that's really
Mhm.
the point of this. What are the liberation
Yeah.
practices and how do we dive deep into them? Because this is really the advice that I feel like we are uniquely positioned to
Yeah.
offer.
Yeah.
We work so much with our own trauma, and I'm
Mhm.
constantly churning mine around.
Mhm.
I'm out there, I'm in it,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing the liberation that comes deeper and deeper layers of delusion, and then taking responsibility.
And that's it. Like, that's important for us to point out, is that like when you choose to do the work, you will experience liberation, right?
Yes.
You'll experience the space, the fluidity. You'll come to understand yourself in a really different way, in such a way that's full of potential and expansive and generative. Like, you just let go of who you thought you were, right? And you come into a real honest relationship with the phenomenal world, and you're not so pulled back and forth by all the narratives that
Hmm.
we get lost in that help us to cope with the intensity of the world. Like, you just kind of start letting that go. And then you're like, okay, whatever happens, happens, right? Whatever comes, comes. It's like, because you have a practice now that can work with and negotiate and metabolize everything that arises. And that for me is why the world has shifted from being so antagonistic to being an experience that's full of potential, right?
Yeah, it's like
And
school. Yeah.
yeah,
And it's
you know,
fast now, everybody. We're in college level, doctorate, postdoctorate level,
yeah,
and that's why we have to have new strategies. This
yeah,
stuff is moving fast
yeah.
too. It's just flowing.
It's flowing, Yeah. And then like, I'm not afraid like I used to be of my own brokenheartedness, of my own pain, my own trauma. I just say, oh, like, you're asking to be cared for. intended to,
Hmm.
right? But the speed of everything makes that even quicker, which I've definitely noticed. Like, oh, I'm moving a lot quicker through things.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
don't hold on, I don't fixate like I used to. I just let it go, and keep getting deeper and keep expanding, right? Which is again the fruits of practice. Like it doesn't just automatically happen. Like you have to be really working with practice or practicing really deeply to see these kinds of fruitions happening.
Yeah,
Like you
but
just
you
can't.
show us what's possible, that how
Yeah,
to do it. And I
yeah,
think that that's really um, the key. You're right. The brokenheartedness is a stage,
yeah.
it's
Hmm.
an experience that
Yeah,
does cut through something. It's like I just came out of a deep heartbreak, old family, father
mm,
wounds, and
yeah,
and was so brokenhearted. But as the pieces come together, it's more buoyant. It's like lighter,
yeah.
and we have
Exactly.
to trust that we go through these cycles, and that the more our hearts are broken. I mean, James Baldwin's heart was broken.
Mm, mm-hmm.
My God. My
Mm-hmm.
goodness, it was broken by what was happening in this country, and
Yeah,
racism and homophobia and hatred, and um but our brokenheartedness can serve
yeah,
us to kind of move into this loving action, because
yeah,
he wasn't violent. He spoke out about
yeah.
violence. How do we embody that energy of moving? Because a lot of, and this
Mm-hmm.
is a whole nother conversation I think we'll have to have about the current state of activism
Mm-hmm.
and the violence that might accompany this,
Mm-hmm.
apocalypse
Mm-hmm.
that is inevitable. I'm surely it's happening all around us.
Mm-hmm.
But how to embody that deep compassion that James Baldwin had, this true spiritual warrior,
Yeah.
embodies both the brokenheartedness and this ability to have this compassion, and
Mm-hmm.
know that we're doing all of this for love. That all of this, exactly what you said, it's the love that's moving us. It's the love that gets us out on the front line,
Yeah.
writes these books,
Yeah. Yeah.
speaks this truth. It's love
Yeah.
that makes us, tell the truth.
Yeah. Well, for me, the love is wanting people to be free from suffering. I can
Yes.
only love people like that because I love myself enough to want to be free from suffering. Right. That's that. But the intention begins with ourselves. Like I recognize my own suffering and I know that's not a place I want to be. Right.
Hmm.
Because I know now that there's a different experience, my true experience, my most authentic, awakened experience. That's where I want to be. And this isn't something I choose any longer. Right. So if I am making this choice, then I begin to develop a deep sensitivity to how others may be lost or confused about how to make the same choice, especially when they want to get free. Right. So the love compels me to show up as an agent of change and liberation for others who are ready to get free. Right. But you have to consent to freedom. Like that's something I can't show up and force you
You have to
to get
surrender
free.
everybody.
You have to surrender. Just like Harriet Tubman couldn't pull or drag people off the plantation, right? She was like, "Here I am. Who's ever ready? Like, meet me here."
Yeah.
Right? So she wasn't like just recruiting, and arguing with people, right? She was like, "No, like when you're ready, I'm here." Right? And that's what we have to understand about, and this is what I've been teaching about for a couple of weeks, is that like you have to like get clear about if you're ready to get free, and a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
And if you're not clear, then you're going to really misunderstand what I'm doing, because
Yeah.
this is going to
You're gonna
feel
fight with it.
you're going to fight. We're going to have a fight. We're going to get we're going to get real argumentative, right? Because I'm getting the hell out of here, right?
Exactly.
And I'm like, whoever is ready, here's what
You're
I'm
like
doing.
Harriet. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're like, I'm
yeah.
going.
That's the thing with the book. It's like, yeah, I'm like, this is like, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Fine. But like, if you're ready to get free, you're gonna find something valuable,
Oh yeah.
like
Oh
in the
yeah.
book.
And you might fight with it for a few months and then come to love it,
Yeah,
because that's how books are, that have real power in
yeah,
them. You argue with the truth, what's being
Yeah.
shared, what's being triggered,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then stop blaming others for the trigger and go into the process, and then a door could open.
Mhm.
And I that's my experience. I've been finding these doors. I
Yeah.
fight with them.
Mhm.
We all fight with this. Nobody wants to go into a broken heart. I mean, it hurts,
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
it
And
always
mhm,
heals.
it's
And
always
I mean,
yeah.
maybe not always. It could take a long time, but this is the journey we sign up for.
Yeah.
These are the experiences that happen
Yeah.
on the path.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. And I just, think that, with brokenheartedness, right? We're not the only ones.
No, my God.
Like that's the first thing
Ah,
that I think we have to really contemplate. It's like I'm not the only one with a broken heart. Everyone else has a heartedness, or like everyone else, so many people will experience brokenheartedness, right? It's just, this is not a punishment necessarily for me, but this is a part of my experience of being human and moving
yes.
through the complexity of a world that arises from emptiness but seems so real, and how I am trying to negotiate that and trying to get clear about what it means to actually transcend this cycle at the same
Hmm.
time. Like, that's what we're trying to do. So I'm not so afraid of my brokenheartedness anymore, because that's a part of getting free. That's a part of getting clear about who I am and what I want and need, and my expectations and the ways in which I hide out from my pain and expect other people to take care of it. I'm
Mm.
learning moment by moment, like, how to tend to these things and how to reduce the likelihood of like intense brokenheartedness, based upon all these like illusions and romanticizings about like how someone's gonna swoop in and take away all my suffering. No,
That's a
someone's
deep
gonna,
one. That's a deep belief, though. And
yeah,
when that goes, you really like it gets real after
yeah,
that. When you realize that it's like
yeah,
you got to tend to it. I mean, that's
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But that's why we call you the commander,
The command.
because you're not afraid of that brokenheartedness.
Mm-mm.
You're not afraid of it. I mean, and that's the path of the spiritual warrior, is we're willing. I think the true bodhisattva,
Yeah.
spiritual warrior, I mean, that's the heart of the bodhisattva. They're
Yes.
willing to get brokenhearted
Well,
10,000 times. They
yeah,
know they are going to be brokenhearted.
yeah,
They are, and they keep stepping in.
yeah. And
So
that's,
beautiful. Oh my
it's,
God.
I mean, it's just like when I was coming up as a young person, like in church or in activism and organizing, I was always so afraid of the elders who were just like so clear, so intense. Like, they were like, "This is it. This is the path. Like, if you can't do this, shut up, get out of here." Like, I had elders like that. I was like, "Oh my god, I am terrified. I just want to have fun and help people." They were like, "We're
Right.
not here to have fun," you know. But like, as I get older, I'm beginning to really understand where they were coming from as elders and that intensity, because they were
Mm.
seeing the ways in which we were just like so unfocused,
Right.
you
It's like the
know?
burning house analogy in the Buddhist, right?
Yeah,
We're all playing with our toys and the house is on
yeah,
fire.
yeah. And I realized, oh, like I had to train to come into that kind of perspective where I'm able to see a lot more clearly than I did as a young person. And so I feel
Mm.
myself becoming those elders, but not because, again, it's because I love people. I want
Mm.
people to be free. And I'm like, I see what you're doing. And I'm trying to offer you a clarity that, I've had to earn. Right. But I want you to start working with this clarity, right, as well, because we don't have as much time as you think we do. Right. And that's what the
Mm.
elders, I mean, you get to eldership like that, right? You get into those advanced years and you're like, oh, this is almost over, right? And so like they want us to take time seriously, and in a sense that like we use the space and the time that we have to do as much work as possible, right? Because this world is not my home, right? This is just an experience, and everything that I do impacts how I transition and continue evolving, as a
Yes.
consciousness, right? But this is in a way, a workshop where I'm like really trying to get as clear as possible, and and lucid as possible, because this is so much like a dream, right? I'm getting
Yeah.
lucid and clear, and this is what I take and use to continue evolving on this
Mm,
path, right? If I don't use this, then it's wasted. And in an interesting way, I feel like we just have to, that's samsara. Like when we don't get the teachings from the cycle, then we're forced to relive the cycle over and over and over again, like Groundhog's Day,
totally.
or the
Yeah,
Russian
absolutely.
doll show on Netflix, which I haven't seen, but like you just keep repeating over and over and over again until you get the fucking point,
Yeah,
right?
and
And
let me tell you, this repeat button, oh, it will play for a billion years. I
yeah,
mean, that's the paradigm.
yeah,
That's what the Buddhas told us, right? It's like, oh,
yeah,
you've done this billion. You hit the
yeah,
play button over and over,
over
and
and over and over
it's
again.
so painful, this game, you
Yeah.
know?
And then a bodhisattva shows up and says, listen, you can do something different.
You could press a different button.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could get out of this.
Yeah.
You could learn. You could
Yeah.
grow. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the invitation, everybody, is toward this growth. And that's what
Yeah.
I love about this book is that it
Mhm.
is a manual. It will open your heart. It may trigger you. It may, bring you great joy,
Mhm.
but it is so important for the stage that we are now. And I feel like we need to have a second, our next episode needs to be on the chapters and the work in each chapter, the earth practice, because I think that
Mhm.
that's the thing is like people are going to be like, tell me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
Lama Rod will tell you, we're all going to tell you all the steps, and your life is going to be like, here you go. And it's all there in the book. But, sometimes we have to hold people's hands
Yeah.
because they're standing on the precipice of their
Mhm.
suffering and it's hard to
Mhm.
take the leap.
Mhm.
They're stepping into the spiritual warrior mode.
Yeah.
They're feeling brokenhearted,
Yeah.
right? And they don't see a way out yet. And
Yeah.
so to offer them these beautiful
Yeah.
strategies, these earth practices, these
Yeah.
ways to come, so I would love for us to take another like part two
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
really dig into, just expand on the work, how to do it, what we're talking
Yeah.
about, what all this means, like really break it down again. It's all
Yeah.
there, but it just helps to have a little bit more conversations, I think, about
Yes.
on the exact liberation practices that
Mhm.
we're referring to, how to do the
Mhm.
work, how to get out,
Mhm.
in a deeper way, I think,
Yeah.
steps and
Yeah. And
practices.
yeah. And just, as we begin to close up, for this episode, I just it just came to mind just to mention that, like, when you begin the spiritual path, like, it's just, well, I'll just, tell this story. Like, when I began really getting, like, really serious about spirituality, like, I just had no idea what I was in store for.
Oh, I know. It's like, get ready for, yeah, yeah.
If you, oh my God, like, if you would have told me at the very beginning, here's the roadmap, this is what you're gonna go through, I wouldn't have believed you. I don't know if, I would have done it, but I've been like, oh, whatever, that's not me. That's not gonna happen, But, like, I just say this just to let you know that we've all been through it. Like, and we're
Mm,
still in it, right? But, like we started, right, and just had no idea what was waiting for us. As a good friend of mine would say, we just had no idea about the secrets of our minds, right?
mhm,
And just to know that, like, you're starting something that has been started and moved through by countless beings before. You're not the first, you won't be the last, but you're a part of, like, a really beautiful, profound lineage of beings who have
mm,
decided to get free, decided to awaken, and to remember their innate Buddhahood, their innate Buddha nature. Right, so you're joining, as we would say in some of the language in traditional Buddhism, you become a child of a noble family.
mm.
Like this noble
Yes.
family that's working to get free and to help others get free, right? So if you really want to help start healing and moving through this process of getting awakened,
Oh, it's so
You know?
beautiful. While you were talking, I just had this image of all
Mm.
these spirits, in the
Yeah.
spirit underground and
Yeah.
Harriet and Dr.
Yeah.
King and all the, just the whole group of people who want to do this, who are
Yeah.
working their way
Yeah.
out, who are moving. And I just saw them all just walking slowly, step by step,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's really inspiring. There is a path to freedom here,
Yeah.
everybody. It's an ancient path.
Yeah.
It's a secret path in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, but we're making it more
Mm.
transparent.
Yeah.
Um, but
And the
yeah, so beautiful.
yeah.
I love
And
that
just
image.
yeah, and well, that image actually is the back cover of the book
Oh, really?
as
We've never
well.
seen the back yet.
Well, we haven't
Oh,
released it. I have it, but we haven't released it publicly. But the back cover is this path that's winding up the
hmm.
back of the book, and there are people walking it,
I
going
think
into
I just
like the
had the vision
mountains.
of it. I haven't seen
I
it, but
think you
I
just saw it, like, so I
yeah, I
wanted to
just saw
mention
it in
it.
my
I was like,
mind,
oh,
and it's so beautiful.
yeah,
And also let yourself, for the listeners, to take refuge in that. You're not
yeah,
alone. And
yeah,
there are guides and also the unseen world, everybody. The spirit
yeah,
underground is all of these spirits that are working with us.
yeah, yeah.
All of them, the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the
Hmm.
activists, those who have fought and died for
Yeah,
liberation, for
absolutely.
theirs, ours, the earth's.
Yeah,
So know that when you do step on that path, you're right. We're now walking on a path with millions of people, but also billion spirits that are
hmm,
guiding us. They have real compassion at the heart of it all, and they want us to be liberated. So this is a journey. So
yeah.
beautiful. So heartbreaking, so beautiful. It's everything,
It's everything. It's
It's
everything.
and you know what? You're right. I'm on a as need to know basis for everything. If they were to tell us our future ahead, we would never.
Oh, me
We just
too.
run away.
Yeah, we would. We would freak out.
We would freak out because we don't know how strong we are,
Yeah,
and so stay in the present moment
yeah,
and get the book. It's epic, good, glorious, and
yeah,
I give thanks for you, Lama Rod. You
yeah.
labored, you channeled.
I mean, my life was on the line, like literally. Like I was just like at the doctor's office, and they're just like, "What's
Oh,
wrong with you? Like, why are you like my blood pressure was all over
oh,
the map, and I wasn't sleeping, and I was super anxious, but that was me opening up all these portals and
absolutely.
channeling all this energy. Like that was really intense, and I think it was super super risky, but like I just trusted,
Hmm.
because so yeah, again, this book is so deeply channeled.
And you
You
have to
know,
dive into those energies yourself. So you
yeah,
have to feel them
exactly.
as you're writing them. That's the
Yeah,
journey of writing these
yeah,
kind of spiritual books, is that
yeah,
you're journeying,
yeah.
you're letting go. And
Hmm.
ooh, it is hard. I know that feeling of being like stressed, and
Hmm.
Harriet took me through some stuff
Oh, I
too.
know, I know. And I was like,
Harriet,
thank God I don't have to do that.
yeah, well, you kind of did
I
it and
did.
you're
I actually,
okay. Yeah,
yeah. It
you were
was
at the
different. It was
doctor's
different, but
office.
like really intense as well. You were running through the plantation and escaping,
Exactly.
but I was just like in these extreme waves of energy that was just like really like altering like my body and like
Oh,
everything, and I was just like, okay, this is it. Like this is again what we agreed to do. Like I can sense into this. This isn't just didn't just happen. I
right.
said yes. Like even with going through the middle passage and ceremonies we talked about in earlier episodes, like I wanted to do that. I
Yeah,
just
you
didn't
flew to Peru to do
understand.
it.
I just didn't understand what it entailed.
Right.
But you do it and you trust you trust the guides, you trust the Buddhas and so forth, and they hold you,
Mhm.
and you just say yes. And that for me, devotion and trust are just important for this work,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. And I just had this other wow, while we're talking, I'm just having so many visions. I had this other vision,
Oh,
of just like what you were doing is like you were clearing like a portal
yeah,
for other people. You were like clearing a piece of the
right.
path.
Oh yeah, I
Right?
definitely felt
Literally
that.
with your
Hmm.
spirit, like, I'm gonna go here and then I have to clear all these
Yeah,
boulders and this is labor.
exactly.
like you open a gate and then we all can start walking through that part of the
Exactly.
path.
Exactly. That's exactly what was happening as well. I
Wow.
was like, "Oh, I have
I
to get
see
this
it.
cleared, and get this out the way for people to be able to travel it. But
Hallelujah.
but I'm like, okay, what what's my reward? for I'm just like, what am I gonna get, for
Exactly.
this?
What do I get for all this labor? I
You know,
know. Well,
I want,
let's
yeah,
see.
yeah, I want
Let
more than just being free.
Yeah, we need some real holistic care. Well, you can send Rod your donations for his epic, massage treatments,
I know.
acupuncture, healing treatments. But I know, you're going next week to do self-care
Yeah,
and just,
you have to. Yeah.
and this is like, this path that we're talking about, it's shamanic. This is, we're all being called into doing this clearing work, everybody. I know we're
Mm-mm,
not the only ones. I talk to
mm-mm,
other people,
mm-mm.
and those are who are spiritual warriors.
Yeah.
They're it's work time, and we're clearing portals, we're excavating, we're
Mhm.
sweating, we're laboring, we're in and out of
Yeah.
hospitals. We're like, it's a powerful time. So we give thanks for
Yeah.
you. We give thanks for the spirits that are helping us. And I give
Yeah.
thanks to all the spiritual warriors
Yeah.
and all our future saints, myself
Exactly.
included. Like, let's
Exactly.
just do this.
Let's just do it.
Let's get down. Let's get down to
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
we're going to be talking a lot about the real practices, again, getting deeper into it as people find this book. Once you read this book, read The Spirit of Harriet Tubman. This will give you strength. Harriet's there for this. She'll walk
Mhm.
with you. She's
Mhm.
conducting.
Mhm.
So fine, you can rely on that as also your guide. You know.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
okay, everybody, we're gonna wrap up this episode. Thank you so much, Rod, for this
Yeah.
book. As I mentioned, you and I will have great conversations in the future about all of this
Yep.
stuff. So um, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Years and years under the master's will. Years and years of hurting each other. We gotta turn it all around.